Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Table Manners for Robots. Excited as always to discuss business with actual real life business leaders here in South Africa, giving us a very practical, on the ground experience. They speak from the heart, they speak from experience, they interact day to day with the challenges that we all face. And, when we get someone to speak on the show, they always hear speaking from a perspective of reality and truth. And that's what we love. That's what we enjoy. So I'm super excited to announce today's guest. It's still very much part of the Unite for Small series, where we are looking at the plight of small to medium businesses in South Africa. And we're looking at how we can help each other and act as a community to perform better and to do well despite trying times for business as a whole. So today we have David and Martin, and I'm going to ask each of them to give us some insight into their backgrounds. Let's start with you, David. Tell us a bit about your background.
Yes, hi, Kerrison. Thank you. And hello to everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar. And especially thank you for your time. You know, I've grown up in the most incredible period and been part of this information and digital age since its very beginning. You know, I was fortunate enough to be a student at one of the few schools that had a computer and was part of their computer club from the very start. You know, we wrote programs on punch cards in COBOL, and it used to take us hours to finish just 100 lines of code. And we created Fibonacci number series and printed them out on 132-column continuous paper with a dot matrix printer. And we used enough power to run a small home for a year. It was cutting edge. You know, it was so time-consuming, manually punching each of the cards with a combination of 3 or 4 buttons simultaneously. And, you know, if you made a mistake, you had to start all over again. There was no typics and word processors, and integrated development studios were not even close to being developed yet. You know, I kept being drawn back to computers as I started a career in management accounts. But the company that I work for chose me to assist in their very first implementation of business software. And it was a big thing then. And I suppose, and it's a big thing even to this day. You know, I ended up knowing more about the software than the supplier. And they used to bring their customers around for me to demo some of their more complex aspects. And I think it's really what, you know, it started when I started my company 30 years ago, you know, as a result of I was the IT manager, and I just wasn't happy with the way that my current employer was supporting their customers. And I say company, but it was really just me out there all on my own. And, you know, I worked my way up and, you know, to earning a partnership with Source Code, you know, supporting a growing client base here in South Africa. And I just never looked back. You know, it was I think what the most important part was that I really enjoyed what I was doing, and I still do. You know, GST has become a specialized boutique implementation and support and development house for ERP business software in the SME market. And yeah, we love our buzzwords, and that, you know, that's a mouthful. But yeah, I say boutique because we have intentionally remained small. And we continue to provide great and personalized support. We also enjoy doing the more complex and challenging implementations. And as a result, often manage to win customers for life. And I think that's an important aspect, to still have a human interaction, even more so in the digital age. There's nothing worse than, you know, trying to log a support call and speaking to a computerized system and not getting anything back. Human interaction is key.
I really like that bit about human interaction. Great background. You know, I think it's always nice to do a bit of a throwback, huh? I think that people so easily forget what we have today at our disposal, and, you know, the things that we take for granted. I mean, you know, the idea that if you lost something or you made a mistake, you had to start over, and then your hours, if not days, are completely wasted. I think we totally take that for granted. We have Control Z, undo at the literally the touch of a button.
Yeah, that's right.
We just take all this for granted.
Yeah, who knows about X on or X off? We used to have to address the printer to print. You know, it was incredible. Yeah, it was
that's
good
awesome.
stuff.
That's great. Great background. Thank you so much, David. Looking forward to what you have to share with us today. Let's talk to Martin. Martin, tell us about your background.
Well, thanks, KG. I'm also going to say hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us briefly. I'm Martin, and I've been with GSD for 15 years. I studied IT at the University of Johannesburg, way back when it was still called Technikon Witwatersrand. My first job was in IT as a systems admin, supporting a mid-range ERP system, and I've been involved in ERP implementations ever since. It's quite interesting is it's on that very system that I worked on. I sort of progressed, through from systems admin to becoming a more sort of junior developer and so forth. And it's on that system that, in inverted commas, I met Dave, because he came over, evaluated some of the code that I'd been writing, and wasn't particularly complimentary of it. I won't quite use the words that he used with me, but we struck up a relationship, a friendship from there, and our paths over time sort of crossed. And one day I saw an amazing product, an amazing ERP solution, and we'd always been talking about taking our skill set into the SME space. And with that, I got hold of Dave. Dave had already, he'd founded Grenville Systems Development. And I said, listen, man, I've seen this fantastic product. And the SAP Business One partnership was then formed. I joined GSD to set up that SAP division in partnership with Dave. And, we haven't looked back ever since. So there you have it, short and sweet.
That's awesome. That's super cool. Really good to hear some of that background and to hear some of your history of working together, guys. So let's start getting into the meat here. Let's talk South Africa. Let's talk business. So, David, as a business leader, a business founder and owner, what are some of your thoughts on the context of South African business right now?
Yeah, Christian, I always like to try and stay positive, but at the same time, one has to be realistic. Mm-hmm. South Africa is currently facing some of its biggest challenges to date. Socio-political, economic issues remain a huge concern. The COVID-19 lockdown, both here and abroad, continues to affect us all. Thankfully, COVID-19 hasn't been as bad locally as envisioned. But possibly due to our early and quick lockdown by President Ramaphosa, or due to us South Africans just being tougher and more resilient. It is probably a bit of both. But it's certainly been a blessing. And it's a ray of hope in these difficult times. I think resilience and innovation is one of South Africa's greatest assets. Who would have thought of Elon Musk and Tesla and the founder being now currently the second richest man in the world? And I think it's not only, I think the wealth is really just shows what he's managed to achieve. We're talking about going to Mars. South Africa and we as a company, we've always had the ability to work and support remotely, and this ability for us has remained invaluable. It's important to adapt and change the way one works and the way you think, while still sticking to the basics and the fundamentals. And that's why I think that, good business software and systems are so important. They remain pertinent today as much as they ever had. In fact, even more important. But they must remain flexible and adaptable to change.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I love the part about South Africans and our resilience, and I don't think we take time out often enough to recognize that as as an actual tangible thing in South Africa. We do possess a resilience that's different, and we do have a culture locally that's that predisposes us to overcome and to conquer. And I think that, I love that you're calling that out as a point. And maybe it is a less spoken point. It's funny about what you mentioned about Elon Musk. I mean, I think South Africans, we funny in that way, huh? when we're good, we're super good, Like if you want to count Gandhi as South African, I mean, he was a South African passport holder. And then, you had Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you have these names that are not just big names. They're huge. They're known the world over. And then you have now an Elon Musk who's setting up for the moon, like you say, and super wealthy. So it's like South Africans, it's like if you're gonna go big, you're gonna go big, which I think is super cool. All right, so Martin, do you have any thoughts on the subject of remote work at this point? I think I might have just jumped down too fast there. Let me
I
back
think
up a second. Let me back up a second here, David. Before I move off you, let me get you to talk to us a little bit about remote work, and then we'll go to Martin.
Yeah, I think the fundamental is decent internet. I think if you're not connected, there's nothing that you can do. Of course, good tools, laptops, headsets, a decent webcam, and business grade software. I think on the other side, it's important to have a dedicated and a well organized workspace. And when I say dedicated, what I mean to say is that if you're using the dining room table, during that time, it should be dedicated to that task at hand. Your environment should mimic an office environment, just like being in the office. Remote working shouldn't be mixed with home and relaxation. It's good to work and it's good to relax. And mixing the two does neither well. And both of them are equally important. It leads to my last point, which is really to have a good balance between work and home life, even if, it's all now in the home, in the confines of the home.
Interesting. So now, Martin, I'm going to ask you to jump in and tell us what do you think, what are some of your thoughts on remote work?
Yeah, thanks, KG. I think foremost on everyone's mind, as Dave said, is the topic of increased dependency on connectivity from a technical infrastructure perspective. Wide area networks, good comms, good bandwidth, and so forth. Mm-hmm. But it's not just about people being able to remotely access systems or systems that need to talk to each other. What's often overlooked is the need for better interpersonal communication when delivering projects and solutions remotely. With a significant reduction in on-site support and face-to-face interaction, we've got to get more focused on communicating clearly with each other across this digital divide. One way to do this is through the use of facilitating technologies such as remote control for knowledge transfer, online meetings, and screen sharing in order to maximize the effectiveness of this communication between people, both internally within your organization, as well as externally with your customers. In short, you've got to make sure that you get your message across clearly, using all of the tools available to achieve, successful deliverables. It's interesting that over the years, we've been happily going along gearing not just our delivery model to be predominantly remotely based, but also we've embraced decentralizing our own operations and our workspaces. The result was that we've become well positioned to take on work beyond our borders. And when the unforeseeable lockdown came along, we were unaffected in our ability to deliver projects and services, during that period.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. This is very, very good insight, I think, to look at this whole concept of remote work. I love what you say there about the people interaction, and I think that aspect is not always discussed often enough. This aspect about people interaction is so critical, and finding ways in which we can replace that, if possible, or approximate some of those human interaction needs over a longer distance or via systems is going to be very critical to success in a remote work environment. So on that, let's just talk about some interesting client situations that you might have run into over your time of doing this kind of work, Martin.
Yeah, geez, KG, there's so many. In 15 years, you'll see quite a lot of interesting situations in implementing ERP software, specifically at SMEs. The one occasion that does spring to mind, we were sat across the boardroom table with the client, and the guy said to me, "Well, you've got to be able to come up with stock that we don't have." And I was like bemused by this and taken aback. We were dealing with an LP gas implementation, and the thing is that LP gas in its very nature, can expand and contract depending on things like ambient temperature and pressure and so forth. And it's this thing that affects it is a concept called density factor. So what happens is a truck can go off to a refinery, pick up a load of gas, go on its milk run during its drops. And interestingly, it could end up dispensing more gas than it actually picked up. So here was this concept of we had to solve, what happens when the truck gets to this last stop, and it ended up dispensing more LP gas than it actually picked up from the refinery. I think some other interesting scenarios, definitely in the fashion and apparel industry. One would think that this is a pretty constant theme, that one fashion house operates in the same way as another fashion house or distributor, but it's not the case. One's view of color, size, style, and how they package, and another's view of color, size, style, and how they package it too, could be completely different, whilst retaining the same fundamental backbone or concept. So, fashion and apparel industry also very interesting for us with some unique nuances per customer.
Interesting thing about those nuances. So before we go on to the next question, I'm going to just appeal to our audience. It's great to have all of you on. As you know, one of the best things about the show is the fact that you get to participate. You get to send your questions and comments directly to our expert panelists. So get involved. It's super easy. Just go to the Q&A box and submit a comment or a question, and I will ensure that we get through every single one, or to the best degree possible. If there's too many, we might have to do it after the show, but we do our best to address every single question or comment through the show itself. So don't be shy, get online, submit your thoughts and questions so that you become part of the show as much as possible. All right, so on that note, let's go to this concept of nuances that Martin mentioned. So, of course, every business has its nuance. So, yes, it's wonderful hearing these stories about gas and how the product is producing itself in some respects. It's causing more of itself, which I think is really phenomenal. And it's a concept of inventory management that I would never have dreamed of until you mentioned it. And then, we have the fashion industry. And even though we think the fashion industry is pretty stock standard, it's a fairly old industry. It's been around for a while. There's known best practices. It's interesting to hear that even inside that established industry, with known best practices, you still have nuances, and you have that wonderful concept of what I call a business fingerprint, your way of doing business, your flair, your creativity, your special touch. It's important to recognize that as part of this human element of business, that we bring to bear our own magic to our specific business. Even if it's a business that's part of an established industry, we have to know what our magic is. And I think, if we just think with that for a second, David, let's go over to you and tell us, I don't want to make it sound like it's a setup, but why should businesses ensure that their actual workflow is built correctly in their system of choice?
Yeah, workflow is the crux of it. I mean, it's literally how work and business moves through, and how you match it to your business solution, and matching that flow to the business system really ensures a proper business process management. It gives structure to those processes. It ensures employee involvement and the establishment of clear roles and responsibilities within an organization. Organizational silos or departmental centers of knowledge become more integrated in the whole flow. Barriers are broken down that have often been created, and this results in much more knowledge sharing within an organization. There are clearer identification and much better alignment with a company's objectives rather than just one individual's. Another aspect that's important in this is measuring and being able to measure performance, which of course in turn leads to continuous improvement. Improvements and of course new strategies can be easier and better managed and implemented. And those strategies are really important to a business and how it manages to survive. Very important is the realization of an enhanced and complete customer experience that can be achieved through all of this. It's really important to start focusing on an outside-in strategy where you focus more on your customer needs rather than a traditional inside-out where you determine what and how it is that the stuff that you sell. And of course, the most important, compliance still remains a vital factor. And with properly workflowed systems, they remain compliant.
Very interesting dimensions there, and I like that you brought all of them up, including the compliance piece, because I don't think anyone will ever get away with saying to a regulator, "Hey, I used an out-the-box workflow, and I didn't realize that it didn't meet all of the compliance requirements." So I think it's about taking responsibility for your workflow and understanding that no matter what system you buy, you can never rely on the system to manage your business. Unfortunately, that's still our job. That's still our responsibility. So great conversation there. I really like this. Let's go a level deeper here. So Martin, tell us what IT strategies do you think a business should follow?
KG, now more than ever, it's clear that businesses need to be digitized in all aspects. From business management systems to HRM systems to online collaboration and so on. We see the need for a good business system to provide the foundation for the delivery of a digital strategy. And in regard to that digital strategy, I believe that there are 4 imperatives that are key to an organization's digital strategy. And these imperatives are integration, innovation, intelligence, and interaction. I'll just go into a bit more detail about them. Integration is self-explanatory. We're seeing the need to connect systems. We're seeing the need that you might have your back office system that's all great at handling transactions, but you've got a very nice online shopping portal that isn't necessarily connected. And you want to connect it. You want this integration there because, for example, you need to be able to push up your inventory levels, your stock on hand quantities, for example. You want your prices, your product information, and that as soon as it changes in the back office, it should then integrate up into your web portal so that your customer's shopping experience is maximized, so that there is in fact stock on hand or not. The last thing you want is for someone to be shopping for a product thinking that you've got availability, but you don't. So you're seeing integration between business partners, for example. You may interact with Takealot, for example, and you're wanting that order when a customer places it on Takealot for it to come directly into your SAP or whichever ERP system you choose. We like SAP, of course. So innovation is the next one. Innovation is definitely the next point. You're wanting your system to work for you and enable efficiencies within your organization to improve the throughput, to improve those customer service levels and then reduce the workload on your employees. With a good custom development, for example, that's a great way of taking high volume transactions, for example, and putting them through the system more efficiently without overburdening your people. Intelligence is a very important topic these days. We all know of this concept of business intelligence, and it has certainly come to the fore more so now than ever. And the reason being is that people need to make business decisions. And those business decisions need to be based on accurate information, true facts, the availability, the timeous availability of key performance indicators, and that to be able to provide those decision support systems for business owners. So business intelligence, vital in today's computer marketplace. Interaction, the final one. Interaction is about getting your people and your systems to interact seamlessly, and so that interaction enables people to enjoy their jobs. I mean, people have to be happy using the system. When people are unhappy using a system, there tends to end up being resistance. So we see the interaction between the human side of it and the system side of it as being extremely important as well. And that's why you need a good business solution that provides the foundation for all of these imperatives, as I've mentioned.
Fantastic, very comprehensive, explanation there, and I like this framework. I like the framework of those subheadings that you mentioned. I think it's very complete, and it really allows you to see all aspects come together. So, taking into account now, David, what Martin's just gone over with us, what are the actual risks of buying off the shelf?
Yeah, I think the greatest risk really is it's so important to keep a company's uniqueness, and because a company's uniqueness is really their competitive edge. And as I discussed earlier about the importance of workflows being properly mapped with a business solution, this is where that aspect of uniqueness is incorporated into that business solution. Off-the-shelf solutions don't necessarily allow for this differences or uniquenesses. And I think the biggest issue here would be, the loss of flexibility, and of course the innovation that comes by sitting down and analyzing current workflows. I can't belabor how important that process is, as it focuses everybody on the issues at hand, and it helps them to identify where and what are the actual problems within the business. No two businesses are the same, and there can never be one set of workflows that can work for all. Another way is really to say this one magical workflow solution. It doesn't exist, and it certainly doesn't exist in off-the-shelf software. Yeah, forcing you to follow a predetermined set of rules can be problematic and I think highly risky.
Very good insight there. Guys, I want to just also share some of my views. I happen to take this particular topic quite seriously. I don't want to necessarily create this message that buying off the shelf is always wrong or bad. I think that there's a time and place for everything, pretty much. And I think that it's very important for business owners to recognize that, sometimes, and speaking as a business leader myself, there are times when I beat myself up quite a lot. And I think that business owners have a tendency to do that. We always think that it's being done better by another, or it's being done better outside of ourselves. And people know better. There's this term called best practice, and best practice almost implies that there's an industry best practice that's a little bit different from what we know to be true within our business. And sometimes we neglect that our processes and our methods and our styles of doing things are hard won. We've worked hard over many decades in some instances to accumulate the knowledge that we have, and that's why we use those methods. We use those methods because they work. They've been tried and tested, and we've learned through years that if we don't use those methods, that the business is going to experience some degree of harm or exposure, or something's not going to work out right. So no matter the area, whether it's finance, whether it's HR, whether it's marketing, sales, whatever, or specifically in our area of operations where we deliver our product, the reality is that there's institutional memory that we've accumulated over many years, and this concept of where things are just randomly changed inside a business because someone feels like we should just change it, or because the industry knows better, that is very short-sighted. So it is important to standardize across systems, and it is important to look at what's happening out there. But this idea or this notion that everyone else knows better about what should be done in your business, that I disagree with. And I think that it's incumbent upon on us to really make our magic happen. It's incumbent upon us to really put our humanness, our humanity, our flair and creativity into our businesses, and really bring that magic. Why are we in business? Why are we doing what we do? It's because of our flair. It's about our magic. It's about that special spark that we bring. You go and get a haircut, and one person is cutting your hair a little bit different to the way another person would cut your hair, and it's because each person is bringing their magic to that job, and you're going to go to that person that resonates with you, where there's that special fingerprint that matches your fingerprint. And it sounds a little bit hazy-phasy, but there's a lot of truth in it. If you really inspect, people are selecting you because of that chemistry that exists between your organization and theirs. So never abandon that. And if you go and buy off the shelf everything, you bit by bit, you're becoming just yet another company or yet another business without a soul, without a fingerprint, without a mark, without your special trademark of what you do. So these are the things that I certainly take very seriously. I have here a comment from Komotso. I'm going to read it out. Komotso says, yeah, I support the idea of outside in because I think we have to consider more of what the customer needs, unlike the inside out idea. So that was obviously in relation to some of the answers from early on. Great stuff, guys. So we're going to keep moving on. Keep those questions coming through. Put them into the Q&A box on Zoom. If you are listening out on Facebook Live or YouTube Live or one of our live platforms, I think we're also on Periscope today. Please send through your comments as well on those respective platforms. We will pick it up and I will address them too. So Q&A box if you're on Zoom, or just type it in wherever you're listening. All right, guys. So let's keep going here. Martin, let's go to you for a second. Is there any customer process or need that you haven't been able to get right?
KG, I think we've got to be realistic here. Business process in its very nature is affected by a myriad of factors, not least of which is about people and their access to systems. Mm-hmm. For instance, if the project budget is constrained, and this results in certain employees not having access to the system or having to rely instead on some sort of manual procedure, then this can have a material bearing on the efficiency of that business process. We've certainly seen well-designed business processes being compromised by time-consuming and inaccurate manual steps sitting in between the faster and more proceduralized system transactions. So KJ, I might be going on a bit now, but this is what we've geared our ability to deliver around. We're able to unpack complexity. We're able to understand at a fundamental level what our customers' needs are on the business process side of things and how this drives their success. So with this fundamental understanding, we come up with creative solutions that are robust, that are reliable, and supportive of our customers' key requirements. I think I'd also like to take this point to say that, not every business requires a bespoke implementation, or not every business has to look beyond off-the-shelf processes and stuff like that. There is a time and a place for a standard implementation and the use of the functionality that is provided by that business application. It's about deciding what's best for the customer and guiding the customer as much.
Mm-hmm. So, Martin, quite an answer there. So, am I hearing correctly that there has not been a customer situation that you have not been able to get right?
Kerishan, no. That's what we undertake. That's the commitment we make to our customers, and we're realistic and upfront with them. Before we even engage with that customer, we would like to know, and we go through quite a thorough process with the client to understand what their needs are. And so we're getting their heads up as to whether the process or the requirement is achievable or not. And when the customer says, can you do this? We're pretty much sure by the time that they sign on the dotted line that we've got our ducks in a row and that we can deliver.
All right, awesome. That's good. It's good to know that we have this talent resident right here in South Africa. I mean, it's not all the time. I think sometimes we just take for granted when we have good talent, and it's something that's very hard to come by. So when I hear these things, I want to celebrate it. I want to make as many people aware of it as possible. Not every business out there feels comfortable just buying a system and implementing it because we believe, for whatever reason, right or wrong, that our special way of getting it done is going to be too difficult to get into a system. And it's completely acceptable to have that thought based on all the discussion we've had so far. You can see that it's legitimate when a person feels, hold on, I do things a bit differently, or I might do the bulk of the work in the same way, but there's like that 20% which needs to be done my way. And because of that, I feel I'm not comfortable to just go move onto some kind of generic system, So I think that knowing that we have good talent in our country who can get involved and who are bold enough to tackle the complex, tackle the unique and the bespoke, and say with confidence, hey, we believe we can do it. I think that's really good for us to hear. All right. Again, audience, let's have some questions, comments coming through. You can put it into the Q&A box. You can do it across the platforms. That's totally fine. Also, at around now, you should get in the Zoom box you should get a survey form. Go ahead and start filling that out. I mean, we know when you're done, but you can just open that up and you can start giving us some of your thoughts and comments. If you'd like any engagement after the session, if you'd like any one-to-one time, please just request that in your survey form, and we'll be sure to follow up with absolutely every person who makes any such request. You just have to hit the link in the chat box, and that'll take care of the survey. It's literally a 30-second survey. It's mostly drop downs. All right, let's go, Martin. Let's keep talking to you for a second here. What would you say to any client out there who believes that their process or their way of doing business is just so difficult and unique that no provider can actually solve their particular challenge?
Karishan, I'm going to give you a short answer on that, and that is put us to the test. Hey, Dave, what do you reckon?
Yeah, Martin, that's great. Yeah, it's quite interesting, that question, because I don't know whether I've ever come across that scenario where somebody says, they don't believe that we can do it. They may ask a question, can you do it? But if I did come across it, I think I would be concerned, and
Yeah.
they may it may possibly be true. I think the biggest problem comes here in a customer asking, can you do this? And then there's this oversell, or the allowance of a bigger expectation, and then the supplier actually failing to deliver on that. And I think that's where the issue comes in. I think expectations are a really important concept to manage, and it's an aspect that needs to be clearly identified and understood and agreed by all parties, so that it can clearly be said what is going to be delivered. And then I think the responsibility is on us then at that point to actually deliver on that promise. And I think when that doesn't happen, that's when there are serious issues.
So then it comes down to good expectation setting and making sure that, as a supplier, that you're being as open and honest with your customer as possible, saying what can be done, saying legitimately what cannot be done, and really playing open cards as early as possible so that no one's left disappointed. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a very healthy approach. So on that, let's take it a step further, and let me ask you a little bit of a challenging question here. A lot of people believe that, of course, with a big budget, you can solve any problem. You can bring in the best of the best developers. You can buy integrations. You can invest in even more technology. So with a huge budget, you can do just about anything. So let's tackle the elephant in the room here. Martin, perhaps let's start with you. Is customization as expensive as we think it is?
KG, customization needn't be as expensive as people think. And in fact, good customization, or let's call it development, adds huge value to a business that far exceeds the cost of that customization.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that development out there is often not done right. And this leads to a reduction in the success of that end product. We've got a different approach. We have a very specific and tightly controlled internal approach to custom development. We do the development cycle ourselves end to end internally, from the initial business analysis all the way through to rolling it out and handing it over to the client. Clear and constant communication throughout this process is extremely important. And we are agile in our ability, because the funny thing with development is you can come up with the greatest spec up front in the world, and then as you're going along, between you, the technology, and the client, things change. The customer might, for example, see an opportunity to enhance that particular requirement that will give them a further edge. The important thing is that because we're so closely knit at GSD, and that everyone communicates so clearly, we're able to rapidly alter that specification, communicate it clearly, and keep everyone on the same page. So it's this, again, to reiterate, this clear and constant communication that gives us this edge in our ability to develop. Also, the concept of customization in itself is a broad topic, because modern business applications, afford varying degrees of customizability, ranging from the simple to the complex. Customization can be as basic as adding a user-defined field. It can be writing a custom written alert, some clever operational reporting, and then you go on to the more complex bespoke developments. The key is to show and understand when to use which to the customer, and guide the customer on this process. And we're very good at this. At our core, we are a development company, hence our name. And we do custom development for our customers on a regular basis. In that, we're very clear with our customers when it comes to doing such development in terms of unpacking the value and the functionality that it's going to provide and add to their business relative to the investment required. And as a result, our customers, they recognize this and appreciate. And I think, I'm going to hand over to Dave and he can expand on this further.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Martin, everything that Martin said is so true. I think also what's important is to, expensive is a relative term. Customizations by their very nature are often highly bespoke, meaning that they're different and they're unique. And they're mostly one-offs with limited reuse by other entities. So proper development done by competent developers based on their time comes at a cost, especially if that cost can't be shared out. What should always be evaluated is what is the return on that cost spread out over time, 5 years, 10 years, because that's what's so important to the company. And obviously, if you can't warrant the expense, then don't undertake that customization. And this should always be taken into account, and often it's not. And then the next biggest problem comes in trying to do the development under cost and cutting corners. And this can actually, result in an even worse problem where something, costs a whole lot of money and then it doesn't work, or even, it even causes more problems than it was trying to solve. In my view, development should never be taken lightly. A lot of thought should go into it as to why you actually need it. Is it warranted? And then, of course, yes, it gives an incredible edge. I think they are important. They have their place, and we talked of uniquenesses and special things that you offer, and all of those bring great value.
Very important points. And I think that my usual response to this question of, hey, do you think customization is expensive? Well, try not customizing. Try using something completely bland, off the shelf, and see how much that costs you. Think about how much you lose. Think about how much of your particular wisdom that you've acquired through the years is now no longer being put into use. So isn't that far more costly? So so great comments there, guys. I got a comment here from Fatima Davids on the call, and it says, I supply chemicals, janitorial, and PPE items to all sectors in the industry. I started off doing a lot of manual work. However, as my business is busy scaling, I am faced with how to do this. I am faced with insufficient systems. I need help, please. What can the panel suggest? Can I connect with someone after the session? So to respond to Fatima, absolutely, we'll be happy to have a conversation with you after this session. We will facilitate that. Feel free to go ahead and complete the survey form. And if you complete the survey form, just indicate your intention to have a follow-up conversation, and we will contact you and facilitate that. Great to have your interest and feedback there, Fatima. A note to everyone on the call. Great opportunity to engage with really strong panelists who really have a lot of wisdom and a lot of good insight for us. If you have questions, if you have thoughts, if you have concerns, if you have worries, just put them into that box. I will read it out. I'll make it easy on you, and then we'll get some good feedback to your questions. All right, let's move on here. So we've had some good discussion so far. We've looked at the price point. We've looked at the fact that this, often there's a lot of thought in the market out there that, hey, you buy one of these big burly systems. There's all these sentiments. You're buying a big SAP system and it's gonna cost you a whole lot of money because you're gonna have to do all of these customizations, and then you get a developer on site, or you get the developer sitting at the supplier, and they're just going to go on for hours and hours and hours, and the bills are just going to keep going up. So honestly, I think it's important that we start confronting these things, that a lot of these urban legends had some truth and relevance at a point in time. But as we were doing a bit of throwback earlier on the call, a lot has changed. Forget about the last 20 years. A lot has changed in the last 2 years. A lot has changed in the last year. So when we really look at it, the playing field that we're operating in is fundamentally different today. And we have to now go and test the waters, ask questions, get involved. Let's not be operating with these old notions and ideas that it's too expensive or too big, or it's going to just take forever. Let's talk to the right people. Let's get advice from the actual experts. Let's figure out in the here and now, is it something that is a deal breaker, or can we actually get it done? Something that could not be done 2 years ago can be done today in an inexpensive and a super quick way. We just have to be asking the question to the right person. The only time it's going to cost too much or take too long is when you're dealing with the wrong people. When you're dealing with incompetent people or people who are making promises that they cannot actually deliver on. That's the danger. So we're going to keep going here for a bit. We have a comment from Dumi. Dumi says, agree with the comment around cutting corners in an effort to reduce costs and meet the budget. In the long run, the approach is actually detrimental and causes even bigger issues than those that the project starts off trying to address. The intrinsic value of a solution needs to be evaluated broadly in terms of actual value, efficiencies, new revenue streams, etc., that the solution will bring about. Absolutely. So it's important to really bring to bear a holistic view of the solution. Jimmy continues to say, I used to be a motorbike enthusiast while trying to buy a helmet and really putting my sales skills to the test, trying to negotiate a good price. I recall the salesperson asking me, how much is your head worth to you? He said that the fundamental question you should ask yourself. And I think that's a great example of looking at a solution and asking the right question. If you think that's expensive, what's the price of not doing it? What's the price of not having that thing? Is that going to be cheaper to you? So great input there. Thank you, Dumi, for the contribution. So we're gonna move on now to another tough question. So in the here and now, Martin, what should prospects or clients expect from their service providers?
KJ, I'm going to think of this in sort of bullet point form. What they should expect is support, assistance, and help. They ought to expect good product knowledge and customer service. Customers should also expect from their solution provider good industry experience. I think that's very important. The ability to think strategically, to be able to understand the customer's needs and requirements, as well as their particular business direction is very important. And I think together with all of that, their partner must be able to innovate whilst being able to manage expectations and being real. You've got to be real, open and honest with your customers.
And I think that last point cannot be overestimated. I think that too often we get people running around telling tall tales, making huge promises. And I think really testing the integrity of your supplier and holding them to account accordingly is critical. These are big decisions and these are long-term partnerships. I mean, we're moving into a world where we're not just signing on a once-off capital expense basis. We're signing up for a long-term partnership, and being able to evaluate the chemistry and the quality of partnership right up front is super, super critical, and not just jump in with someone who just sounds good, through one conversation. It's really about assessing and testing the relationship and the strength of the relationship over the longer term. Great stuff, guys. Again, as we start approaching the close of the session. I mean, we're 10 minutes away, so we still have a little bit more to cover here. But I invite you to become part of the conversation still. Put forward your comments, questions in the feedback or in the Q&A box, and don't forget to complete your surveys. These are vital to us. We take the feedback very seriously. We're always looking to improve the show, make it better, make it more relevant and valuable to you. So please go ahead and complete a survey for us. It's going to take you less than 30 seconds. So we're going to keep going here for a bit. So tell me, let's go to David here for a second. How do we make companies more competitive?
Christian, apart from the obvious, and of course it's very important about keeping costs down. I think all of this, the cost of software and the cost of implementation, yes, it's very possible in the SME market to implement good software at a good price. It doesn't have to, be unachievable, come at this huge cost. And when we talk about competitiveness, we've already spoken about things like workflow and strategies and compliance and innovation. But I think the biggest thing is to assist in a company having the best software and the most reliable systems possible. And it's also important to keep in all of this, in this digitization, to keep a company's uniqueness and flair, because it is the differentiator. Specialized development, is often takes this to the next level, and it forms a very important aspect. But it's not always and should not necessarily need to be the case.
Absolutely, and I like that you brought in the concept of the flair piece, because when we think competitiveness, we tend to lean over on the point about efficiencies and about pricing and about making sure that we're offering more for less. That's what competitive has become equal to. And I think that there's that other element which is less spoken about, which is, what is our magic? I mean, the ultimate answer to competitiveness is to stand out, and is to bring to bear something that you do that few others can. And that is the ultimate answer to competitiveness. Of course, efficiencies are going to be, important. Like we can't survive if we're becoming less efficient. So we have to keep the efficiencies going. But we have to bring to bear our differentiator. We have to bring to bear our magic. And I think that the fact that you called that out is excellent, because that is, in fact, to me, one of the most important elements of competitiveness. So Martin, let's talk to you for a second. Let's get some very practical advice now at this point. How do we manage inventory right?
KG, I'll start off with saying that you've got to enrich your stock master data in your system with as much meaningful and measurable information as possible. For example, you want to be able to record your minimum and maximum stock levels at an item level. You've got to maintain those order lead times on a regular basis. You've got to be able to capture and manage those shipping methods, and also enrich the data with as much of your item data classifiers as possible. And I'll get into why this is important. All of what I've just mentioned, these can then be used in planning functions such as MRP, materials requirements planning, and also in analysis tools such as our inventory analytics model, to ensure that you buy the right stock in the right quantities to satisfy predictable levels of demand, and to ensure that you do so on a timely basis. Also, when it comes to dead stock, dead stock ties up capital. You need to identify it and sell it, even if it's at reduced margins, in order to generate cash flow. Dave, you've got great insights into inventory management. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to you.
Martin, obviously inventory management is a very important aspect, especially with, as you mentioned, the large cost and tie-up of money. And some interesting things is really, if you think over the years, businesses have been getting better and better at truly optimized production technology and, keeping those inventory levels down. But then COVID came along and had a huge impact on supply chains around the world. Who would have thought? Most certainly the most important part is being able to control and know what your inventory is together with your demand forecasting and reordering. Still being, important parts of that, managing that inventory cycle. Providing the right reporting management tools, I think, remain the most important aspect of all of this.
Yeah, indeed. And I think that, this whole, the fact is that in the past, if we felt we could get away with just knowing or having a good feel about our business and knowing what's there and what isn't, if we felt we could cope, maybe we could have in the past. It's just that unfortunately now with the pressure of the recent months and the massive change that has occurred in the year 2020, which people haven't fully understood. And I'm pretty sure when the year is about to end, everyone's going to have a moment where they go, wow, this planet is a different planet Earth. Things have changed substantially in this year. And at that moment when that hits you, whether you're standing at the beach and it's New Year's Eve 2021, whenever it happens, be sure of one thing. Recognize for your future that this is a different tomorrow, and the way in which we do business has to align, or we should sign out. Because the reality is, doing business by the feel of our hand, not going to work anymore. We've got to have systems. We've got to have visibility. We've got to have transparency. I want to make sure that we touch on the cash point, the money point. A lot of people are interested in the money point, so I want to touch on that before we move on. Let me just address a question or a comment that came through here from Sitimbiso. Sitimbiso asks, can we get the recordings? Absolutely, Sitimbiso. You can just visit tablemannersforrobots.com. And if you visit tablemannersforrobots.com, you will get directed to our YouTube channel. And in fact, you can just watch the videos right there. So go ahead and check that out. And of course, complete a webinar feedback link. Just go ahead and complete that. It's going to take you 30 seconds. And if you do, we'll be able to even give you more insight if you need. You can make some special requests over there. So that's great. So guys, let's talk money as we start wrapping up the show. Guys, we haven't wrapped up the show yet, so stay with us until we do. Let's talk cash for a bit. Any tips, David, as a strong business leader, any tips for managing cash flow?
Yeah, well, I can tell you is I spend it wisely. Buy software.
Of course.
Look, I'm an IT guy, and I think maybe I should stick to that. Working capital is by its very name intended to be spent, and it probably shouldn't be used to buy the latest top model sports car. I think, it should be used to increase support and improve your company. And any successful company needs to have a solid operational base. And there can be no better return than investing in good software.
Mm-hmm. I like the fact that you say working capital is by its definition, and if you look at what it's meant to do inside a business, it is in fact quite correctly money that is meant to be spent. It is working capital. It's capital that's meant to be working for the business. So I like that because it makes me feel better about spending money. Having said that, I do agree that being prudent and being smart about where we put those rands or dollars is ultimately the mark of a strong leader versus someone who will not necessarily steer the ship out the storm. So it's really down to that decision factor. The guy who's able, or the guy, and by guy I mean the man or the woman who is making a good decision regarding how to spend those dollars to make more dollars for the company. And really investing in good systems that's going to give good transparency, give better order, create better efficiency, bring the best out of people. Those systems are in fact going to, for the longer term, bear fruit and bring rewards. So that's great. I like our alignment on that one, David. So maybe we should do one more on money before we wrap. We have only a few seconds left, but maybe you could give us some quick insight here. Should we be spending money at a time like this?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we see it. The successful companies are the ones that continue to spend the most. And it's not really about spending the most either. The important thing is sort of investing in good software and understanding that you need to continue to invest in IT to maintain and keep that competitive advantage. Good business software continues to provide the framework and to be the enabler to doing business in the best possible way. it allows you to measure and continuously aim to improve on what it is that you do. And this is really important. It's not about the amount of money that you spend, but it's about the need to continually spend on IT.
Mm-hmm. And I often say that if you're going to spend 10 rands to make 100 rands, you'll find 1,000 such rands to spend, so you get the same ratio of benefit back. I mean, the ultimate question is always going to be what's making you money back in tangible and in intangible terms. What's making you money back? And of course, if you're getting a whole lot of money, you're getting a whole lot of value back, it makes no sense not to spend. It in fact becomes costlier not to spend. So that's a very important viewpoint on the subject of money. So on that note, guys, we're going to have to start wrapping at this stage. I feel we've had a super fun show. I've really enjoyed dialoguing with our guests. It's been a fantastic experience for me to just learn from these different perspectives and viewpoints, as I always do on the show. Really enjoyed the audience engagement. In fact, we've had Alden say in the chat box here, great session, KG and the team. So definitely some good feedback going. Guys, if you have not completed your survey forms, please go ahead and do so. It's only going to take you 30 seconds and it's very valuable to us. And then just to close out, I want to say thank you to both of our esteemed guests. Thank you so much for taking the time out and sharing your expertise and your insight. Really, really been fantastic having you on the show. Thank you, guys. And with that, we're out.
Thanks, Kit.